Helen here. Welcome to the mousiemakes podcast. Thanks for joining me today. If you're new or if you haven't been many times before, you're really welcome. And if you've popped in quite a few times, then it's lovely to have you back. I live in Durham in the northeast of England, and my podcast is about all sorts of things. Sometimes it's on a theme, and sometimes it's just a whole mixture of things, which is what it is today. So today I'm just going to show you one or two of the things that I've made recently, and I'm going to do a quick update of my bullet journal for anybody who's interested in seeing that. And we're going to pop into the kitchen to make a really tasty snack, and we are going to go for a lovely walk. Right, so let's get started. First of all, things I've been making. Well, one thing that I've kind of finished, I suppose it's not properly finished, and that is the slow stitching or Boro stitching project that I've been doing for a while. And so here it is. So just a great big long panel of lots of stitches, and obviously it's not finished, and I've decided I'm going to make it into a wall hanging, which means that I need to back it and put edging round and put some means of hanging on the top. I think I'm going to put some hanging loops in the top and then find a stick to hang it on. That's going to go into my conservatory. And I just had a brilliant time making this. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. I had absolutely no plan, no pattern. I just did what I felt like each time I came to it. So when I started off, I really kind of started doing straight across, not always straight lines, but sometimes little crosses, sometimes little speckly bits, sometimes slanty ways. But then I got kind of about halfway through and I decided to go rogue. I decided just to see where my needle and thread wanted to go. So I've done all sorts of things. So the top half is actually, when you look at it closely, is quite different. I love this bit where I decided not to sew on top of one of the birds and just do running stitch radiating outwards from that. I really like that bit there. I like the circular bit here, which I didn't really intend to be the sunshine, but I guess you could see it as the sun. Because when I chose the fabrics, I actually chose to have greenish ones at the bottom going up to bluish ones, so that it was a very, very abstract sort of landscapey picture, and kept the birds at the top and the bees, and then flowers and rabbits and things down at the bottom. So I've got all sorts of patches here. This section here, I was just using up bits of thread that I had left over. You know how if you use embroidery thread and you're separating the strands, you can end up with just spare lengths of thread. And so I was using up all of the bits of thread here. Anyway, I'm really, really pleased with that. So that's one thing that's finished but not quite finished. And then the other project I'm going to show you, which is finished but not quite finished, are some knitted birds. So we've got a sparrow and a blackbird and a little wren that are finished at the moment. And so those are finished, but the reason they're not finished is because I'm making more birds. If you saw my Easter Makes and Bakes podcast, you would have seen that I had kind of suspended from the wall in the conservatory some tree branches, which I hung Easter eggs and chicks and, Eastery things on. And of course I've now taken off all the decorations, but the branches are still there. And I just thought, as I was sitting there one day, it would be really nice to have some birds on there. So I'm busy making birds for that. So those three are finished. I'm using this book here, Sue Stratford's Knitted Aviary, which you may have seen me showing you before, which I love. So I'm in the middle of making another blue tit, and I've also started a bullfinch. and I'll make 1 or 2 more, I think, and they will all sit in the branches. So I'm looking forward to that being finished. And then I have actually spent quite a bit of my time just drawing because of, doing all that daily drawing for the 100-day project. I've sort of got into the habit of doing a bit of drawing, so that's what else I've been doing. And I have got my other ongoing projects, the shawl and the socks. I have got one of the socks finished, the socks that last time I was talking about projects, I told you I'd put in the naughty corner because things just kept going wrong with it. Anyway, that I've finished one sock and I'm partway through the next one. And my mitered square blanket I've got on the go as well. So I think it's a couple of months since I last mentioned anything about my bullet journal, so I thought you might like to see what I've been doing. This is my 2021 bullet journal. 1 or 2 pages that you may have seen before have been updated, such as the big garden bird watch and the completion of the 100-day project. In fact, I just added a couple of pages rounding up the 100-day project. I decided to have another go at keeping a record of my completed knitting, crochet and sewing projects, and so far I've managed to keep it up to date. I hope this will be a helpful place for me to look back on to find out where I found a particular pattern or which yarn I used for a project. And it's also helpful for when I want to share finished projects with you on YouTube. I also started a page about projects I'd like to start or things that I've got waiting, and another page to keep myself motivated with longer projects so I can tick off when I get through those. I seem to have written quite a few new inspirational quotes into my journal recently, most of which I have included in podcasts, so you may be familiar with these ones. And I've got a few drawings that I did for the Easter Makes and Bakes episode and for the little short story that I did called Robin and the Rabbits, so I had fun doing those drawings. I wrote a page listing all the creative things that I enjoy doing, because they were going around in my head, I do this and I do that. And then I wrote things that I've tried for the first time this year and things I'd like to spend more time on, and new activities that I haven't tried before but would like to. I wrote a reflection on the pandemic when it was 1 whole year since the first lockdown began in 2020, and I found it quite useful to collect my thoughts, although I purposely kept it brief. I also recorded the UK government's roadmap for taking us out of the most recent lockdown, and I stuck in the bus ticket from the last time I travelled anywhere by bus, which was just a few days before the first lockdown. I've stuck in a few bits of memorabilia, such as the letter that I got to say to book my first COVID jab, and a leaflet we got telling us the census was going to take place, and also an excellent cheese tasting party on Zoom with my knitting group, the Loopy Ladies. We had such a nice time. Somebody delivered me a bag of cheeses, and then we met on Zoom and tasted all of the cheeses together and drank wine and had a generally good time. I'm continuing to keep a record of the walks that I go on. Also, I decided that I really, really wanted to get back to reading more actual books, because I listen to a lot of audio books because I can do that while I'm making things. But I have a pile of books to read. So I set myself an easily attainable challenge of reading for at least 10 minutes a day. And it worked so well doing this in April that I'm doing it again for May. And you might notice that I'm actually starting to read for a little bit longer on most days. Right, I think we'll go and pop into the kitchen now to make one of my favourite snacks that I like to have for lunch sometimes. And it's called Welsh Rarebit, or more correctly pronounced Welsh Rarebit, although there is no rabbit involved. It's a really ancient dish. It's been around for centuries. Apparently the Welsh were renowned from the 1500s onwards for really liking cheese on toast. And the Welsh Rarebit recipe is developed from those times. It is very basically a kind of a thick cheese sauce that you spread on toast and toast it, and you eat it hot. It was the first written record of it was in the diary of an English poet called John Byrom, not to be confused with Lord Byron. And he obviously liked it a lot because he wrote in this diary quite often that he'd had Welsh Rarebit. A few years after that, I think it was the Welsh probably who changed the name from rabbit to rarebit, because rabbit was kind of poking fun at the poor people who couldn't afford to have rabbit on their toast, but just had to have cheese. So, although, I mean, I don't think anybody really knows why it's called that. Yeah, there is apparently an English rarebit and a Scotch rarebit. Although these are recipes that were in a recipe book from 1745. They don't sound very appealing to me. The English one in particular, you were supposed to toast your bread and then pour red wine over it, so it went all soggy, and then you put the cheesy stuff on the top. Don't fancy that. Anyway, Welsh Rarebit is absolutely lovely. And yes, I don't use the traditional base, which is ale or stout or beer, but I use milk instead. And you'll see that I'm using mustard powder, but you can just use normal mustard. And yeah, so maybe you'd like to have a go at it. I'm going to show you how to make it now. So here we go, off we go into the kitchen. Right, so we've had our snack now, so I think we better go and get some exercise. So I went on a lovely walk the other day with my friend Mary. It's here in Durham, we're in the peak time for the Bluebells being out, and so we decided to go for a walk in a woods not far from us called Hoffle Woods, where there are just banks and banks of gorgeous purple bluebells. So I took lots of video while I was there because they were so gorgeous. If you enjoy my Gentle Makes poetry podcast, you will in a week or so see probably some of the same video because I found some lovely poems about bluebells as well. Apparently Anne Bronte wrote a poem about bluebells, and Emily Bronte wrote one as well. Though they're somewhat sad. They're not really happy ones. Also found a poem by John Masefield, who wrote the famous I Must Go Down to the Sea. He's written one about bluebells, which is also a little bit kind of sad and reflective. Anyway, so yes, but hopefully you can't have too much of seeing bluebells. And just before we go on the walk, I thought you might be interested to know some of the folklore behind bluebells that I came across. I think I came across it on the National Trust website when I was looking there. So one of the folklore myths is that if you wear a garland of bluebells, you'll be compelled to tell the truth. Apparently bluebell woods are enchanted and fairies use them to lure and trap people in their netherworld. Also, if you turn one of the flowers inside out without tearing it, you'll eventually win the heart of the one you love. And apparently if a child picks a bluebell in a bluebell wood, they'll never be seen again. Bluebells have had a lot of practical uses over the ages. Apparently during the Queen Elizabeth I's reign, the big rough collars were stiffened using starch made from the crushed bulbs of bluebells. The gummy sap from bluebells was also used as a glue for bookbinding. And as the sap is so toxic, it stopped certain insects from attacking the binding. Herbalists used to use bluebells to prevent nightmares. And 13th century monks apparently used bluebells to treat snake bites and leprosy. So it was a bit of a kill or cure remedy, given that bluebells are poisonous. So let's go off into the bluebell woods with me. And I'll play the piano for you as well while we walk. Right then, I hope you enjoyed that little walk, and it is now time for me to say goodbye to you. Thanks for spending your precious time with me. It's really lovely, and keep making comments. Thank you so much for those as well. And I will be back again very soon. So take care. Bye.